Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, the other day, there was a great discussion going on after one of my episodes where, well, I talked about what the community had to say about the power bracket system in the rankings of the different things, and in there was this great comment that I think summarizes things pretty well on one of the big potential problems, which there are definitely going to be many problems with the power bracket system. But one of my biggest problems with the system and what could be a major contributor to some headaches moving forward, let's jump into it. So, Lord Lost 13, thank you so much for your comment. So, in my opinion, salt factor feels bad should never, ever be what makes a card in a higher bracket. I get that some cards folks don't like to play against, but it doesn't mean that it's objectively powerful. So every card in the bracket should be based off of power and never be based off of feelings players have on it. I 100% agree with this. And I did bring that up on the episode just about how cards like Farewell is a card that I believe actually the community put in tier 3, power level 3, just the second highest one. When, in my estimations, I put it at like a 1, maybe a 2 would be pushing it, essentially. I'm not saying that mine are correct. I'm saying that the reason that it is higher is because of its salt factor, and people are taking that into account, and that isn't necessarily what you should be doing when you're just doing, hey, this is the power level of the cards. You got to know what the power level of certain cards are if you're going to play against a certain power deck. The salt factor is separate from that, and I think needs to be pulled out of that. And here's kind of the inherent problem with the whole thing, is that Wizards is, well, baking the salt factor in, it seems like, obviously, with the Commander Power Bracket picture they put out. And again, this is not finalized. They do want to get something working before Las Vegas, I believe, at the end of this month, which is very ambitious, and hopefully they go about it in the right way, but we shall see. But again, just you could kind of see like this in the example cards they showed. If you literally just look at the left column, right? If you looked at Vampiric Tutor, Personal Tutor, Fabricate, Swords of Plowshares, that makes sense, right? Those cards, for those, you know, here's a high power 4 card, 3, 2, 1. If you put them in that order, that makes complete sense. If you look at the right column of cards, again, that middle column, whatever it is, Armageddon, Dranth Magistrate, Thalia, and ignore Grave Titan, because that's just kind of another example of a low power, essentially. Yeah, if you look at those 3 cards, especially the top 2, Armageddon, Dranth Magistrate, those are different beasts entirely. Armageddon is nowhere near as powerful as Vampiric Tutor. It just simply isn't. And to illustrate this, let's just quickly jump into, well, a handy-dandy Moxfield list that I put together where I'm going to be discussing basically, yeah, when you are bringing in the salt factor, it just kind of, it convolutes things and confuses them, and essentially, you're comparing apples and oranges and saying that they're the exact same thing. And sure, you can try to have a little bit of nuance in your little system. We're like, this is power 4, but for this reason, or this is power 4, but for that reason. That kind of just confuses the whole thing versus just being like, hey, okay, input your list, like they said. Right, okay, you've got a Vampiric Tutor list. All right, that's a level 4 card, right? It's a tutor. I've said this before many times. Here we go. Search your library card, shuffle your library, put that card on top, lose 2 life. Instant for 1 mana. Absurd. Crazy powerful card. Yeah, it is, power 9 in Commander. So, this is a card that I don't think many people would argue against it being a top tier card in Commander when it comes to power. When it comes to Armageddon, this is not a top tier card in Commander. This is not like, oh my gosh, the power level of that deck because it has Armageddon. No, it is the salt level of the deck because it has Armageddon. And salt and power are 2 completely different things. If you check out EDHREC Salt Scale, they do a great job each year. They send out a community survey, and many, many people out there, just like the Power Bracket survey that was sent out on Reddit, actually, fill it out essentially and give their opinion on how salty a card is on a scale, I believe, of 1 to 4. Armageddon, I think, is the second highest one in there at 2.83, or it's definitely, top 3, 4, whatever it is. Anyways, Armageddon is a card that sees play in certain types of decks out there, and that is not usually a casual deck or ever casual decks, really. So essentially, you cannot say that it's a same power level of Vampiric Tutor card. That just kind of confuses people. What should be happening is, again, you input whatever your list is. Wizards has their calculation, whatever says your deck's of this because of this, this because of this. They literally could just say, like, your deck is not casual because, hey, you got Armageddon in it, and that's not a casual card. This card has a salt score of this. You might want to consider taking it out if you're trying to play casually. I think that would be a better approach than being like, yeah, Vampiric Tutor and Armageddon, same thing. No, it's not the same thing. Personal Tutor is the other example they gave, obviously. A more specific tutor, sorcery, a single blue mana, search for a sorcery card, reveal the card on top. Okay. Again, and it makes sense in that context that this is a very powerful card, like Vampiric Tutor, but it's like more specific in its sorcery speed. Okay, that makes sense as out of 3. Drannith Magistrate, again, not as powerful as a tutor for 1 mana, but still a card that is incredibly salt-inducing. A 1/3 human wizard for 2 mana and white. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Yeah, that's going to be salt-inducing in Commander because that includes the command zone, of course, and it just shuts down your opponents from casting things, including their commander, essentially. 2.58 on the salt scale. Again, that elevates its number, and you can see that in the community voting again, where certain cards, again, like Farewell, which we'll see on this list here in a little bit, that is up higher in the power rankings simply because it is a saltier card, not because it is a card. Farewell is not on the list, the same plane even as Cyclonic Rift. It's nowhere near it, and yet that ended up in the exact same spot. Exact same spot because of the salt rating. So, really quick, let's go through what Wizards needs to do, and basically, I mean, again, cards like Stasis, a 3.12, it is one of the saltiest, I think it is the saltiest card of all time in Commander. Now, it's probably wrong on Armageddon. I don't know where it's at, actually. It's not 3. Regardless, Stasis up there. It used to be up there. All right, 3.12. It sees play in 10,000 decks, which might seem like a lot, but that's like 0% of eligible decks out there, essentially, right, according to EDHREC. You can look up the numbers on these, but essentially, when you're saying, like, Stasis, wow, oh, a power 4 card, what I mean, like, in their current iteration of the list, it's definitely up there with Armageddon. It would be a power 4 card. Everyone skips their untap step during your upkeep. Basically, you pay a blue or you sacrifice Stasis. Yeah, it's an incredibly annoying card. Not being able to untap things. It's a giant stacks piece. And basically, with all these stacks pieces, it's kind of more so a, well, it's not a power level 4 card. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, okay, it's same level as Vampiric Tutor. No, it's a completely different beast. It's a completely different kind of deck. It is one, again, where you literally input your deck list, and it shows, okay, here's the cards that are 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever it is, but actually should just kind of point out, okay, no, this is a salt-inducing card. According to EDHREC's numbers, 3.12, if Wizards does their own system at some point. Regardless, it's a good way to go about it and say, like, okay, no, this is a card that is not considered to be casual at all. Like, at all. There are very few play groups in casual that would consider this card playable in casual. And kind of just pointing it out in that way instead of being like, no, it's a 4, just like Vampiric Tutor, where if you sat down and asked someone, you know, in a casual format, are you okay with playing with Vampiric Tutor? I think many players out there would be. I am completely fine playing this. I played against this card so many times, but I have never played against Stasis because that is not a casual card. So again, when you're saying that power level and salt should be in the same scale, you are talking about 2 separate things, and it just adds to confusion. So I don't think that that's a direction that we should be going. Winter Orb, obviously another one, 3.11. Again, you could not argue that this is like, oh, it's the same thing as Vampiric Tutor. No, it's not. It is a card that is obnoxious for casual groups. It does not see play in casual decks. It is a stacks piece, as long as the untapped players can untap more than 1 land during the untap step. So there you go. Again, even like Commanders, too, this is something that is interesting because Vorinclex is one of the saltiest cards of all time. 2.88 on the salt scale. Actually, I skipped past Nadu. I will say that 3.04, but that one got banned, so there you go. That one's no longer salty, apparently. All right, Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, though. This is going to be another interesting issue because the community poll they actually included like the top 50 commanders as well, and Vorinclex is nowhere near that, don't worry about that. But the top 50 commanders were included in that poll, like just separate, like, okay, let's see like where commanders rank. That's going to be interesting to see like where we land on like, okay, like are they even on the power bracket scale? I mean, I would probably maybe just kind of give like a note to players out there, be like, hey, this is a very powerful commander. You might get targeted because it's powerful. But also, if you have a commander like Vorinclex, you're going to be like, oh, hey, just a heads up, your commander is incredibly salt-inducing, so you're probably going to get targeted just for playing it as your commander. Just a heads up. Like, again, not saying that Vorinclex is a tier 4, power level 4 commander. It's not one of the most powerful commanders of all time. It's nowhere near that. It's not. It's just an incredibly salty commander. So I do think we do need, like, this distinction between power and salt. Wizards Again, it's very early in their process. They've said they've been working on this for a little while, though, but like it's very early in their process with this kind of a thing. But they need to, again, in my opinion, don't rush it out and get it wrong the first time. You're going to lose community trust that way. Get it as right as you can. And again, I don't believe that a power bracket system is ever going to be be sufficient for essentially what they want to do with it, because all the intricacies of cards, again, the synergies of cards are not taken into account, again, except for they've said combos, and we'll talk about that here in another episode at some point, I'm sure. But basically, it's just taking into account, like, okay, yeah, Vampiric Tutor, very powerful card. Like, that does not just determine just throwing one Vampiric Tutor in a deck that your deck is a 4, okay? It really doesn't. Next up, okay, Armageddon's pretty high up there, okay? It's like 5 or 6 or whatever it is. 2.83, so there you go. But again, only sees play in 22,000 decks, which is not a high percentage at all, like 2, or not even 2%, like, was it 0 or 1% basically? But still. Again, like for these, like, oh, doesn't see much play at all, but it's incredibly salt-inducing. Yeah, that's not like necessarily a powerful card. That is more so just a, oh, yeah, we don't play that in casual card. When it comes to other ones like Fast Oracle that shows up on this list too, it is a powerful card, yes. But also when it comes to combos, that's something that needs to be highlighted further in another episode. And again, needs to be highlighted further in their system too, and just kind of how that works necessarily. And I don't know if that actually should just be like, this is a power level 4 combo. Maybe. Or maybe it's just one where, like, you make players aware that there's a combo in their deck that, like, some playgroups might not be okay with, or that you need to, like, let players know that you're playing a deck that's got combos in it, essentially. Static Orbs up there as well. Obviously, another stacks piece. 2.8. Not very many decks at all. Again, 18,000 decks. It seems like a lot, but it's not a lot. All right, Turgid got off right. Again, like, another commander that, like, literally you sit down at the table. If you're a brand new player and you built a deck around this, you might be a bit confused why everyone wants to take you out and you haven't met them before. And you're just like, oh, I'm just playing Magic. Oh, it's because you're playing an incredibly salty commander. So again, giving them the heads up of, hey, this is a salty commander ahead of time is probably a good idea. Next up, and this is kind of an interesting one on the list, the One Ring. This is one where it is salty and is powerful and does see casual play. And probably is a card they never should have printed, but they're never going to ban it, probably because, they aren't going to ban it because it's so expensive, and they just, ban things, the rules committee did. And also, like, Post Malone spent $2.7 million on one of these or whatever it was, so they probably won't ban it because of that, too. No idea. That's just speculation. Anyways, yeah. This is a card that is powerful and is salty, again, and is a good example of one that probably could see pretty high up there, right, on the power rankings list, without it just being like, oh, it's just because of the salt of the card. It's pretty obvious, again, when you have, like, power plus salt. Again, this one's in almost 300,000 decks versus, like, okay, Apocalypse, 1,738 decks. Again, like a minuscule percentile of the One Rings play, and yet this might be considered to be on the exact same level of it because of the salt level of it, okay? So when it comes to this, we need to separate these things out. You need to separate out, again, in my opinion, commanders. Jin-Gitaxias Karag, if you're playing this as your commander, you're probably going to get some hate because it is salty. And I say hate, like, I mean people targeting you, essentially, in the game. So, yes, again, like, this is a very salt-inducing card, but, like, this is salty versus the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale is also salty, but, again, doesn't see all that much play. It's also incredibly expensive, but you have to be able to determine all these things. It's not just throw them all into this one power bracket and we've solved it. I think oversimplifying things is going to cause more problems than it actually solves. Again, if you're building this tool for brand new players, you need to have things explained in good ways. You need to have some good user experience for their website or whatever it's going to be. And you need to be able to explain to players why something is powerful or why something is salty. And you need to have that as a distinction and not just pretend that they're the same thing. You do have examples of ones that are like a combination of the two. Ristic Study. This is one that I can't remember where the community ended up on this one, actually. It might have been a 4. I think I had it as a 3, but I think the community put this one at a 4, actually. And again, I do believe that that's because there's a salt factor to it. I mean, a really high salt factor, 2.61. It definitely could still be a 4, okay? Like, I could be wrong on that one, too. But I do think that, again, explaining that this is a card that, yes, is powerful, yes, does see play in casual formats, in casual commander, but also is salt-inducing. It's not necessarily one that you need to take out of your deck, potentially, like an Armageddon, because that's just a card that players literally won't play against, but it is one that if you put this down, you're going to get players coming at you, so know that, okay? So I do think, again, there is some distinction. Again, there's like a lot of different again, like Expropriate, like very salty card, sees less play than the other ones, but still it's a very powerful but game-ending card necessarily. So there's a distinction between all these different pieces of it, and I think Wizards is trying to simplify it to the kind of just lowest form that they can, and by oversimplifying it to, like, again, just like throw everything on the same power scale, I think it's going to cause more issues and confusion, especially with newer players, you know, maybe ones who don't have an established playgroup and who are going to use this system. Again, if you have this at Command Fest, players are going to use the system, especially too if you have like, okay, here's the 1s, here's the 2s, here's the 3s, here are the 4s. They kind of like brought that up. And then you've got someone in a 3 playing, yeah, Personal Tutor, which is fine. It's a tutor, cool. And then you've got someone else playing a Drannith Magistrate. And then that player is confused as to why the other players are upset that they played a Drannith Magistrate. It's power level 3. It should be fine, right? But it is a different beast. And again, that is one where you just need to highlight and be like, hey, again, when you put your deck list into the thing, like, hey, Drannith Magistrate, yeah, it's probably a no-go for casual play for the most part. And these are the reasons why. It is a salt-inducing card. It is a stacks piece. Other cards, you know, like Personal Tutor that are in this same power level 3 or whatever they're going to call it, like, they're in there for their actual power. Drannith Magistrate is not an overpowered card. It is just a card that is absolutely obnoxious. So there's a difference. And yeah, just basically highlighting like, hey, the things that Commander players aren't okay with typically, stacks, land destruction. Those are like the two main things. And if you have those, don't be surprised if you get targeted. Or, you know, Grand Arbiter Augustin IV. If you have a commander that, again, is inherently salty. Is Grand Arbiter Augustin IV one of the most powerful commanders of all time? No, it is not. Nowhere near it. In fact, it's a very good commander. It's nowhere near as powerful as other ones, though. But still, it is a salt-inducing commander. So do not be surprised, again, if other people at the table go after you. And again, there is that distinction between now we need power, we need salt, and we need commander. I don't even know how they're going to handle that one again. Like, commander power potential, but, like, again, if you've got an Urza deck that is fully tuned, yeah, that's a 4. If you've got an Urza deck that literally just has random artifacts chucked into it, it's still probably pretty good, but it's nowhere near a 4. So, like, it's interesting in them trying to, like, oversimplify things. I think it's going to make things a bit convoluted, a bit confusing, and I hope they get something to work, at least, again, for newer players who understand, like, some of the basics of casual commander and, like, what majority of commander players play. Like, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. This, maybe don't use as your commander unless you're willing for other players to come after you right away. And explaining kind of the reasons why with all those things, the difference in salt level between Sunder and Cyclonic Rift. Like, you need to be able to explain those and say, like, this one's a powerful card, that's why it's salty, and it's very powerful. And the other one is gets rid of all lands. Yeah, it didn't destroy them, but it got rid of all of them. So that's why it's a salty card and why you probably shouldn't play that in casual commander. So there you go. Yeah, I think overall, again, I understand the intent that Wizards has with this power bracket, and it's kind of fun just to think about, okay, like, if they actually are going to group these cards and say, okay, what's a 4, what's a 3, what's a 2, and they actually said that they, like, wouldn't go through, like, the entire history of Magic and say, like, what everything is. I don't think it's actually that difficult, to be honest, because, like, there's only going to be so many in 4. Like, there's going to be, like, 7 cards in 4. Maybe, again, 7 to 10 cards in 3. 2 will have maybe 100 cards or so. I don't know. And then 1's going to have, like, nothing. I mean, not nothing, sorry. 1's going to have the rest. I mean, like, you don't have to really think about 1. 1 is just, like, copy, paste all the other cards, essentially. Because if cards are seeing play, you're not going to, like, have, like, a tier. Like, again, if you, this is where it's different, where, again, I say you need to take out the saltiness of the thing. You need to take out, again, the stacks pieces of land destruction out of this list and say, like, that's a separate thing. If you literally have that in your list, it's just, like, not a casual card typically, okay? That just really is what most playgroups do not want to play against typically. It's not because of power. It is because of salt. Take that out. And, again, it's pretty easy to just, like, sort through and be like, oh, okay, yeah, most of these things are a 1. Almost everything is a 1. Like, again, if you take out the entire 220,000 or whatever there are cards in Magic these days, 90+%, more than 90%, way more than 90% are probably going to be in that 1 power tier. Again, cards that can easily go in any deck in Commander. Ones that don't stand out as like, oh my gosh, they displayed this. Wow, they displayed Vampiric Tutor, they displayed Personal Tutor, they displayed Fabricate, whatever it is, like tutors, free counterspells, all those kind of things. Like, I think, again, just even look at the top 100 cards, most of the cards that are going to show up in 4-3-2 are going to be in those top 100 cards. Because that's just how Commander works. When it comes to players playing powerful cards, the most played ones are probably going to be up there. like, sure, you get like down a bit further, maybe top 500 cards, you'll start finding some other ones too, but like, you're not going to find something in the bottom half played that is all, oh my gosh, like no one's playing this tier 4 card out of, how does no one know about this? No, we kind of, not that Commander can never really be solved, but like players can understand like what the best cards in the format are, and there's no like hidden gem that's a tier power 4 card that no one's playing somehow. That's not happening. So again, I do think that like if they just want to at a base level say like these cards are generally considered to be 4, 3s, 2s, great, and everything else say 1, cool, but it has to be based on the power of the card, the perceived power by the community, or whatever it is of the card, and not based on salt. Again, stop comparing apples and oranges. That is not going to work well. You need to just say, like, again, you input your list, here's your 4s, 3s, 2s, whatever it is, this is your deck overall, and then, oh wait, by the way, you have Drannith Magistrate in your deck. You might want to consider taking that out if you're playing casual, because it's not considered to be a casual card because of this reason, or Armageddon, or whatever it is. Not just saying like, yeah, that's a 3, just like your personal tutor, you're good to go at the 3 table. It's like, no, that's a different game entirely. So that's just my opinion. I've definitely seen other opinions that are similar to it, though in comments as well, where it's like, there's some confusion as to why Wizards is going about it in this way, where it's like power and salt together. It doesn't seem like something that would work out all that well, because there is kind of a confusion over that. Again, trying to oversimplify it to just this one thing kind of is maybe not the best idea. But again, I could be wrong, and I could be proven wrong. Could be the best system of all time. And again, I do think like highlighting combos is also another thing. And then also commander power is also another thing that they need to like figure out too, because like our commander is going to be in here. If you just have Urza as your commander, is it always a 4? Like that doesn't seem to make sense either. So there's a lot of intricacies to this. And again, like trying to oversimplify it, I think creates more problems than it helps solve, but we shall see. Again, you're going to have players be like, and again, if you already have like an established group that knows like what your power levels are typically, just in general, like what works well in your group, this isn't really for you. I mean, it's going to be fun just like input your list and be like, what does it say about mine? Like, cool. But it is more so for, again, like those command fests, like at your LGS, just like a nice discussion topic to start things off, essentially, and that's what it's meant to be. But I think by oversimplifying it and just saying like, this is, you know, this is how it works, I think that you're going to have people run into like, oh, okay, well, mine's a 3 and yours is a 4 because you've got, you know, this in it or whatever. So like, wow, like you should probably take that out. Like, I think you need to have it explained in a way, again, where you have just a good holding hand for newer players and communities, what this should be, and it should be explaining things, and it shouldn't be, I mean, how confusing is that to new players if you're like Vampiric Tutor is the same thing as Armageddon? Like, it's not. It's nowhere near it. So there you go. Okay, love to hear about your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Again, this entire episode was sparked by a comment. So yeah, comment below. Let me know your thoughts are on all this. Do you think that power and salt need to be separate? Do you think that like Wizards should just tell players when they put their list in like, hey, Armageddon, maybe not something you should have in your casual commander deck. Yeah, we know it's not banned. Yeah, but maybe not in your casual commander deck because it's not really a casual card at all. Vampiric Tutor, sure, fine. It's a 4, but Armageddon, maybe not. So yeah. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Make sure you comment below with your thoughts on this one. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.